Okay.
Hopefully that will pop up there.
Yeah, that's great that you can do that.
Yep, there you
It's
go.
hard to get. It's hard to get them.
We're live.
All right.
The cat actually captured me a minute ago walking forward. And our number count just jumped up again.
Perfect.
There we go.
All right. Shut my phone off. All right. So what do I do to?
Mic check. We're on, so we can just
Okay.
clip that.
Arthritis. I'm not good at clipping. Try the right hand. I don't have a lot of thumbs. I can't get it. It's okay. We can do first. I don't have much strength on my thumbs.
There. There we go.
Okay.
Okay. And then this can either go in your pocket, or you can hold it, or
All right.
Whatever you prefer.
Okay.
It clips onto the belt.
I don't have a belt. I'll put it in my pocket. There we go.
And I think we're just all set.
So how do I advance the slides?
1 second, I will show you the clicker there.
You're live now. So
Okay.
if you want to just tell them we're almost ready.
All right. We're just about ready to get started. I'm sorry for the delay.
So this will go forward,
Okay.
and then this one will go backwards if you need to go backwards. So
Well,
the big
big-
one is the forward,
Okay.
the bottom one is backwards.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Andrea Holmberg, and I'm the coordinator of the Sharp Healthcare Senior Resource Centers. We're a small department within Sharp that helps families, seniors, caregivers with a lot of the non-medical kinds of things they may need, or the medical connections that they need to make in order to get the best possible care that they can for themselves or their loved ones. So the Senior Resource Center provides health information. We do health screenings. We have a program called the Vial of Life, which is an emergency medical information card. It goes on your refrigerator. And in case of an emergency, the paramedics know to look there. And then they know right away what medical condition someone has, who their doctor is, who to contact in case of emergency. In addition to the person that you're caring for, it's important to have this for yourself, because if something happens to you, if you were to take a fall or something happened, would you be able to get the care that you need? So we give these away. I know that many of you are looking at this online, so you're welcome to contact me. My email is there on the first slide, and you can email me and ask me to mail you a couple of vials if you don't already have one. So these our services for the Senior Resource Center are free, and they're open to anyone. So I'm very proud of the programs that we provide. So the resources and tools class I started because people don't know what resources are available. We like to be able to explain just a few of those in a short amount of time today. So if I rush through something, I'm sorry. We do this class usually in an hour and a half, and we do offer them in the community through our Sharp Memorial and Sharp Grossmont Senior Resource Center. So the first thing I like to talk about is food. Nutrition is very important for people to make sure that everyone is well nourished. It's easy for the caregivers to prepare a special meal for their loved one, and then neglect themselves. How many of us have chips and ice cream for dinner sometimes, or popcorn, because we've had a rough day and we deserve it? So yeah, Keith's showing me the Doritos there. So we want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity. And sometimes we know it's difficult to get out and go shopping, to do the cooking, meal preparation, and so on. So there are several different options. Aging and Independent Services is the county department that helps older adults and adults with disabilities. Their number is 1-800-510-2020. They have a list of all the various locations where people can get nutrition. You can also call 211, which is a phone number that connects people with social services, particularly those people who may be looking for emergency food or food banks that are doing free distribution of food. Also the senior nutrition sites. So the home delivered meals are very helpful. It's not only a meal, but it's also a friendly face coming to the door and making sure that your loved one's answering the door and being taken care of. So there's Meals on Wheels. Jewish Family Services has the Foodmobile. I always like to tell people that JFS provides a lot of different services, and you do not have to be Jewish. So that's important for people to know. Serving seniors, serves the downtown area. It very much depends on where you live as to which service is available. So if you live in the city of San Diego versus La Mesa or Solana Beach or Vista, services will vary by area. So I didn't list them all. You can call that 800-510-2020 number or the 211, or you can contact me for particulars in your area. There are also some services that are available that will do grocery shopping for you. Now, some people get particular and want a particular banana and don't want someone else shopping for them. That's okay. There are also the in-home non-medical services that you can hire to help take care of your loved one, and one of the services they provide is grocery shopping or taking someone to the grocery store and running some of those errands that you just may not have time for. Adult daycare is primarily for someone with dementia, but it can be other health issues as well. It's typically paid for through Medi-Cal, the state welfare system. They provide care for someone during the day from about usually 9 to 3 or maybe 4 o'clock, Monday through Friday. They have services like therapists and activities, meals, various things. You can also pay privately. Unfortunately, Medicare does not cover the daycare services except for the St. Paul's PACE program. Home health is when someone needs medical care and they want their insurance to pay for it. Primarily, it's oftentimes it's for people who may have come home from the hospital after a stroke or a surgery and need some physical therapy, wound care, nursing. That'll be for a short amount of time and a few weeks possibly, and then Medicare and the insurance companies do pay for that kind of care. You can also hire private duty nurses. Those are very expensive, but it is possible. They are available. In-home non-medical care is one of the growth industries in this county and around the country, really. When I've been a caregiver 3 times. When I was in my late 20s, my aunt had dementia and I took care of her. We had 1 home care agency in town, 1. Now we have about 400. So quite a difference. So the in-home non-medical care can be for people who are needing help that's not nursing care. It's not covered by your insurance because it's not medical care. Your health insurance does not pay for medical, only pays for medical care, not the non-medical. You don't need to be a nurse or a professionally trained person to help someone with a bath, give them, remind them to take their medication, do the laundry, run errands, and so on. So in-home supportive services is a program for the very low-income people who are on Medi-Cal or have SSI, the supplement to Social Security. And they have, you can call that 800 number again for that. And they have providers that'll come in the home. Typically, they'll have somebody cover for maybe 12, 15 hours a week. So it's not a full-time care. It's something that's, but it's paid through the county and the federal funds for that service. Sometimes you can hire your own family member to provide that care if you're low income. So that can be helpful for that family member who's already providing the care. But you have to be low income to qualify for that. The rest of the non-medical care businesses are for-profit. You need to pay so much an hour. Typically, they have a 4-hour minimum. The rates vary, but it's typically $23 to $26 or $7 an hour, depending on how much care someone needs.
So several of the agencies, the bigger ones,
Uh-huh.
have arranged with the ALS Association for a 2-hour minimum.
A 2-hour minimum. Oh, that's good. That's wonderful. Yeah. So you can ask the ALS Society about some of the agencies that provide less hours, and there's usually a 4-hour minimum, but some of them will do less. And that can be really helpful if you just need to get somebody up and out in the morning and get the bath and the breakfast and all of that. So that can be very helpful. You want to make sure the agency is a licensed agency. The state of California changed the law about a year and a half ago where the agencies need to be licensed, which means they're covered with liability insurance, workers' comp. They have screened their homemakers. They've done criminal background checks to make sure they didn't just get out of jail. We would really encourage everyone to use licensed providers because you don't want to have the case where if you get someone off Craigslist, really that's where the crooks go to find jobs. So you want to be and even if it's someone you know from church, you may not know their background as well as you think you do. So you need to make sure those people get checked out because you don't want to come home and find some of your stuff missing. You don't want someone falling on your floor and then suing for your homeowner's insurance. It can get very complicated when you already have a complicated life. So you want to think about that as you're hiring a caregiver. And ALS certainly has agencies that they work with that they can refer you to who are trained and understand what kinds of things that someone needs to do. There are also care management services. So if you're just totally overwhelmed, you don't know what to do, you're tired of fighting with the insurance company, you've told the doctor things, they're not listening, they're not following through for you, care management services are private companies that may have a licensed clinical social worker or a nurse who will come out and advise you about what's available. They'll be able to say, intervene for you on your behalf. My mother got dementia. I've had 3 people in my life with dementia. So when my mom had dementia, we had to move her to Oklahoma near my sister, and Mom started immediately stirring up a fuss and wasn't going to have it. Wasn't going to be there. It just was getting worse and worse, and my sister worked full time, and she takes care of 2 disabled adults in her family. It was more than she could deal with. And so I hired a care management services. We signed a form that said they could speak for us, that the doctors and the housing place and so on could give them information on our behalf. And so she became our intermediary. And it really was good because she wasn't emotionally involved. So when Mom was yelling at her, she didn't take it personally. So that was quite good. It's also important to know about medical equipment and supplies. The California Telephone Access Program has a number of free phones. They have phones for people with vision and hearing loss, but also mobility issues. They have some really cool phones, and they're all free. And so that's on the handout here as well. San Diego Center for the Blind, the Braille Institute have wonderful classes in assistive devices. I would suggest everybody go to a medical supply store and see what it is they have to offer, because you'll find things you didn't necessarily know existed. With my mom, she was almost 97 when she passed. I got a thing called a handy bar, which was a little bar you stick in the door latch of the car, and with that she could pull herself up, get out of the car, and get in her wheelchair without me having to lift her. Score! That was wonderful. So I didn't know that sort of thing existed, and when I found it, I just thought that was the greatest little device ever. So you want to check out what kinds of medical equipment and supplies are available. You want to talk to the doctor about the things that you find that might be helpful and see if it might be covered by insurance. Yes, sir.
So one of the biggest displays of medical equipment is in Lemon Grove, San Diego Home Medical Supply.
Yes,
we don't have a
very good
relationship with them, but they have
there's several really good ones. Professional Medical Supply is actually larger in El Cajon.
Yep.
So both
Harmony.
of those are good. And then in Claremont, there's one called Harmony Home Medical.
Yes.
And one of the things I liked about Harmony is they have things like showers set up where somebody could roll into the shower, and they have more lifestyle kinds of things, I think, than some of the others. So there's a variety of different ones. So you'd want to try and look around at some of those things and just wander around and say, wow, I didn't know that existed. And the more you can have your loved one help him or herself, the better. So try that. There's also monitoring systems if you're worried about leaving someone alone. The emergency response buttons are the ones that you wear around the neck that monitor someone 24 hours a day. They can press it if they need help for something. There are also some now that have, that technology is just booming. There's some that have GPS inside so they can tell where the person is when they fell. They can tell they fell because they can see the drop in altitude just from where they were standing and then suddenly down a few feet. So that's pretty cool. that those kinds of things are available. The county has a program called Project Care that provides a safety net for people, and we're part of that safety net in the East County through my office. And what they do is they call people 5 days. The 211 handles most of the county, and then in North County, Inland, and Coastal, it's Interfaith Community Services. And so they will call people 5 days a week and check on them. And if they don't answer, if it rings busy, they'll call an emergency contact or send someone over to check on that person. We've been making these calls. Our calls are automated. They're not personal ones in the East County for about 20 years. And we found 8 or 9 people and gotten them to the hospital in time. So it's a really cool program. And it's really for people that just live alone or they just don't have anyone that they check in with regularly. Sometimes you need to think out of the box. You've got to be pretty creative to be a caregiver. So baby monitors can be really helpful. And you can hear what's going on without being right in the room with them. So that might be an idea for you as well. Legal services. It's very important to get your legal affairs in order. I hope that you all have advanced care, healthcare directives for your loved one and for yourself. There is a company that does free legal documents. It's called Elder Law and Advocacy. And they provide free help for anyone 60 or over or someone caring for someone 60 or older. They can help you fill out an advance directive, a simple will, a power of attorney for finance, those kinds of documents. So that can be really helpful. And then the post form is a newer one. It's been around a couple of years in California, and it's called the Physician Order Life Sustaining Treatment. And it's similar to a directive in that it asks questions, but it's more specific. Do you want to be put on a ventilator? Do you want to have a feeding tube? Do you want CPR? And so on. And then the doctor actually signs that. And people have told me that they'll pay, the emergency personnel will pay more attention to a doctor's signature. That is a bright pink form that you can get from the doctor's office. It's very common now when people are in facilities that they all need to have a post. And because what used to happen was the patient would get an infection or other problem, be shipped to the emergency room in the middle of the night, and the ER would have nothing about the patient at all. So this way they know what the person's wishes are. We want everyone to make their own choices of what kind of care they want. A DNR is the Do Not Resuscitate form that you also get from your doctor, and that's something that's important. All of these forms are important to talk about with your family so that everybody knows what your wishes are and they know your wishes as well. When my husband had dementia, he was probably 2 or 3 years into his dementia, and I realized that he was my agent for my power of attorney for health, and he didn't remember my name. Oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Look at the business I'm in, and I forgot to think about myself. So you want to make sure that, so I had the form changed, but you have to make sure that in the midst of all the caregiving chaos, you have to think about yourself. So please do that for the advance directive and the other forms as well. Who's going to sign a check if something happens? That sort of thing is things you need to think about. The health insurance stuff can get really confusing, and so there's a really good agency called HICAP, which is associated with Elder Law, and they do health insurance counseling for people on Medicare, the senior HMOs. They explain long-term care, the drug benefits, and they can act as an advocate for people when they're having disputes with the insurance company. SHARP does have an advanced care planning department that will sit down with you and talk about all these various documents as well. It's free, and you do not need to be a SHARP member. So that can be very helpful as well. The lawyers, the legal side, think more about making sure all the dots are crossed. Our advanced care planning department talks more about how are you all going to handle this, and what do you truly want? And they spend more time maybe with the social work aspect of that kind of a form. There are some transportation services available. There's not a lot of wheelchair transport, but there is some, so I've listed some of those here. There's a volunteer driver coalition that covers most areas of the county, and the number there is on the slide there, so you can see what might be available. SHARP does provide some services if someone needs to come into the hospital and have therapy or wound care or a surgery. You know, there's many times that we can provide that for them. We're not taking people to Kaiser, I'm sorry. We'll take them to SHARP facilities. It's very important that you get respite care. Respite means give yourself a break. You cannot do this 24/7. You'll end up sick yourself, you'll end up exhausted, you'll end up angry. you've got to take care. So you need to look at home care agencies. You need to look at I brought the elder care directories. They're in the libraries if you don't have them. If you don't have access to that, you're welcome to call me and I'll mail you one. So this is an example of the elder care directory the Union Tribune puts out. You also want to have look at what, if someone is a veteran or the spouse of a veteran, they have an aid and attendance program that will sometimes help pay for care for a loved one who needs home care or needs placement in a facility. So you want to ask around about a lot of these kinds of things. There's a number of different agencies that are really helpful. And of course, the ALS Society is one of those. It's not on my slide because it's not as common. I couldn't list everyone, and that's not as common an issue as some of the other things. But the other organization I wanted to mention to you in particular is Southern Caregiver Resource Center. They're a free service for family caregivers. You, the caregiver, is the client, not your loved one. They have counselors that will sit down and talk to you about your stuff. Why won't your family help more? Why do they argue with you about what needs to be done? How are you going to cope with having young children and having someone else that you're caring for, and give all of them the time that they need? So they also have support groups around the county, and they do education. One of the things I would encourage everyone to do is become educated about caregiving and about the diseases that your loved one faces. Because if you understand and know what to expect, you're going to have a better idea. I always use the example with Parkinson's disease. One of the things that can happen with Parkinson's is people will start to freeze. So they'll be walking along and then suddenly they'll just stop. And it's like their brain went into neutral. So you've got to stop and touch them, speak to them. It's like you have to snap their brain back into gear, and then they'll start walking again. Well, if you don't know about freezing, that can be scary. Suddenly something happens. So it's better for you to know about things ahead of time, I believe. I know I'm going really fast, but okay. All right, so housing options. How many of us have promised we are not going to put our loved one in a facility? You know, when you said in sickness and in health, that did not mean killing yourself trying to take care of someone. And sometimes it's just not possible to take care of someone at home. You're not a nurse. Think about all the jobs you have as a caregiver. You're a nurse, you're a chauffeur, you're a cook, you're an entertainment chair, you're a chauffeur, you are a housekeeper, you're the gardener, fix-it person. There's a lot of chores to do. And so it may become too much for you. So there are a few shared housing programs where somebody could share a home with someone else that's looking. Elder Help of San Diego is a good organization. Their number's on the slide there. They provide that kind of a service and match people up and check them out, again, to make sure they aren't just out of jail. But there are different kinds of facilities. The residential care facilities are either large facilities or private homes that offer a room or a shared room. They're non-medical, so they don't have a nurse standing by, but they do have supervision. So that can be, and it's typically a private pay. Again, health insurance, unfortunately, does not pay for housing. There are intermediate and assisted living facilities where they'll provide some assistance, and the loved one still have some independence in what they're doing. So that's generally a private pay, very limited health insurance coverage. Sometimes long-term care, if someone has a long-term care policy, it can cover this kind of thing. Assisted living facilities can range from really fancy large places that are out on the La Jolla Cove to the small board and cares, which are a home-like setting that just has 4 or 5 people living there. They won't have as many activities or services as the large facilities do, but they're still all very valuable. And you know, with my mother, I had her move into a board and care because I knew I couldn't take care of her. I'm working full time. It was just going to be too much for me to deal with. And so I was still her caregiver, supervised her care, visited her regularly. Everybody there knew me, but she was around other people. You know, the thing I didn't think about at the time was she was around other people that were close to her age. And one lady and her decided that they'd been best friends for 40 years, and they were fine then. And so they were friends, and they'd talk about how long they'd known each other when they just met, 3 months ago. But it made her happy to be there. I always try and tell people, think about what your loved one likes the most. Do they like music? Do they like activities? Do they want to be outside? My mom is from Texas. She wanted to be outdoors all the time. So the place I picked for her had 3 outdoor patios, so she'd have a different view. And it wasn't just a cement slab. It was trees and birds and flowers outside. So that's what made her more content, was to find something that was similar for her that she would do. Now, if someone really needs nursing care, there are the skilled nursing facilities, and those can vary quite a bit. You can go on the Medicare.gov website, and it will show you what the ratings are for various nursing homes, how many violations that they've had, what kinds of violations. You know, it's one thing if the food's been reported as a little cold. It's a whole nother thing if you're looking at deaths or people falling and being neglected and so on. There are some that are strictly dementia facilities as well. End-of-life care, eventually, you're going to need to think about that. It's not a pleasant topic for people, but it is something that you can think about. There's a number of hospices here. Could you get my water for me? Could you grab my water for me? Thank you.
You got a fundraiser coming up August 21st.
We do. We have our hospice has a fundraiser coming up. It's the regatta. It's quite the thing. Yeah, it's quite the thing. We have boat races out on the bay and a nice dinner in Coronado. It's quite the thing. So if you want to get all dolled up or go out and have a nice day on the boat, you can participate in our regatta. So Sharp Healthcare is a nonprofit organization. We're actually the largest nonprofit in the county. So, you know, yes, we're always looking for help. I'm very happy that Sharp Healthcare supports my department, because we're a small department, but we do a lot of good in the community, and they recognize that. And, you know, sometimes people ask who pays for our services, and it's the hospitals. It's Grossmont Hospital and Sharp Memorial who pays for our services. So now we're going to quickly talk about the emotional issues. Oh gosh, you know, we don't want to face those, but we sure have them. You can be in denial and say, I just can't do this. It can't be that my loved one has this disease. It's just too much. You need to try and educate yourself more. Is it okay if I sit down? Yeah. I have arthritis myself. One of the things we tell caregivers is always take care of yourself. So I stand for a while, then I sit for a while. So I hope that's okay. All right. So when you're in denial, it's often your loved ones who are saying, oh, that can't be. I talked to them the other day and they're fine. So you want to try and get past that and say, what are we going to do for these, to help? And maybe someone else needs to speak for you. Maybe the doctor needs to talk to the person, or a nurse, or somebody from ALS, and explain, what does all this mean? And the other thing that's really common is anger. How did this happen to me? How did this happen to my loved one? Life is not fair. We didn't plan to, when we retired or as we're going through life, we didn't plan to have all this to deal with. It's too much. So you have to think about a way of releasing your anger. And oftentimes it's things like exercise and getting the heart pumping. One lady told me that she would buy plates at the thrift shop and then throw them against the back cement wall and watch them shatter. And it made her feel better to see that stuff just shatter and break. But what's wrong with that plan? She had to clean it up. I wouldn't do that myself, but that was her way of getting rid of anger. Sometimes people will just scream and cry in the shower. You need to find a way to get past it. And oftentimes what I tell people too is, when your loved one, whether it's your family member or the person that you're caring for, is angry and yelling at you, it's because they're afraid. And they know that you're not going to run away, that you're going to stick with them. And so anger can be a real hard thing for people to try and cope with, because somebody's yelling at you all the time. It's not pleasant. But I kind of developed this little method that I call my plastic shield. So when somebody starts yelling at me, I envision this plastic shield in front of me. And when they say, this isn't fair, and I'm not going to do this, and blah, 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 I look at it and I see the shield, and I see it hit the shield, all their anger hit the shield and bounce back at them. And in my head, I'm thinking, this is not my problem. This is not my problem. And To them, I'll say, oh my, I'm so sorry to hear that. Isn't that too bad? Oh gosh, something like that. And I just don't let it reach my shoulders. And so it takes a while to develop that kind of a trick, but oftentimes they're not angry at you, they're angry at the disease. They're angry at what's happening to them, their lack of mobility, their lack of freedom, their lack of independence. That's what they're angry about. They're not really angry at you, but who do they take it out on? You. People can also feel guilty. Your loved one can feel guilty for putting you through all of this. You can feel guilty because you can't fix everything. You can't make this go away and make everything fine. You can have guilt over things you've said or done, for not being a perfect caregiver. You can feel bad because you weren't able to do some of these things that your loved one might have done before, especially when it's a spousal relationship. It's really hard because you divide your duties between the two, and suddenly one of you has to pick up all the duties. Not fair, go back to angry. I didn't want to have to learn to do some of the things I had to do, but you have to just kind of take deep breaths. Going to a counselor is really important. Going to a support group is important because you'll find other people the same way. And, I've often heard people say, oh, my mother will yell at me, but not someone else. And then somebody else in the support group will say, my mother does the same thing. So I'll take your mother, you take mine, and maybe work it out. So there's also a sense of loss and grief because, let's face it, you're not living the life that you thought you would. As health declines, you have to face that maybe you're not going to be going to an exotic island on vacation. You're not going to be hiking the Pacific Coast Trail or something. But what can you do? So but you need to recognize that that's very common, that you feel a sense of loss and grief before the person passes, because those things what you're dealing with are tough situations. This is not easy. This is not something that you should beat yourself up about if you're having trouble handling it. You could also get really depressed and be overwhelmed. When I was a caregiver, I can remember many times just feeling overwhelmed between work, the rest of my family, and then taking care of my loved one. It was a lot to deal with. And so depression is pretty common amongst caregivers. And what I would say is try and think about what brings you joy. What is it that makes you smile during the day? Is it playing with the grandkids? Is it walking the beach? Is it going to a movie that has nothing to do with the disease? I love those Lifetime stories of everyone having these different diseases, but I don't watch those. It's too much for me. I know too many people who suffer with those things. It's not the same. And so don't watch I would advise you not to watch those kind. But you want to do something that's going to be fun and get out of your own head. And if this just goes on and on and on, and you're not feeling any better, you need to talk with your doctor about it. It's important you take care of yourself. I can't say that often enough. For you to be an effective caregiver, you need to take care of yourself because your loved one needs you to be healthy. So you need to go to the doctor regularly. And if you're just severely depressed and you just wake up every morning thinking, oh gosh, I got to get out of bed, I don't want to do this, you need to talk to your doctor and see if they can provide some medication for you or some therapy or some other kinds of support services. Sometimes people need something just to get them over a hump. It's not saying that someone's mentally ill or forever and ever this way. It could be you're just having a super bad time and you need a little help to get over it and get through it. You can also feel anxious and helpless because you're not able to do everything. You're worried about what if. I try and tell caregivers, don't worry about what's going to happen in the future because you don't know. There's no way to tell. And then you've wasted all that worry. So anxiety is very common because you just, and I'm sure your loved ones have anxiety as well. It's easy to have resentment and come up with old issues in the past. So you want to try not to let that enter into things. When I took care of my mom, I was never her favorite kid because I was always trying to help her fix things and she didn't want my help. So I would go through my younger sister who was the favorite. But I was okay with that. As long as it got the job done, I would have an idea like Meals on Wheels and say, tell Mom about Meals on Wheels, Meals on Wheels. Mom called me and said, your sister had this fabulous idea. I said, really? What was that? And she said, Meals on Wheels. She explained the program. I said, would you like me to set that up for you? And she said, yes. Now, if I had suggested it, she would have said, "Are you implying I can't cook anymore?" So you got to let that go. It's okay that I wasn't the favorite kid, and because she had dementia, truly, it was kind of nice because once she got dementia, she forgot she was mad at me. So, she let all that resentment go that she held for so many years. So you want to try not to let those issues go forth. And it's hard not to be resentful of your family if they're not helping you as much as you would like. And so sometimes you have to realize that it's just not in everyone to be a caregiver. Some of them can't deal with it. It's more than they can handle. They're not as strong as you are. And so you need to be able to recognize that. And maybe if they can't help with the person physically or go visit them a lot, maybe they could do something else. Maybe they could call them on the phone. Maybe they could look up resources in your community that you don't know about. Maybe they could help pay for a break for you. You want to be careful that you're not just totally wiped out, exhausted, because that can happen. That you've done everything you could until you just can't, you're not getting sleep, you're getting woke up 2 or 3 times in the night. You need to hire help or find someone else to help care for someone or start thinking about a facility. You want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. I would also say you want to be sure to keep your friends and not isolate yourself. It's very easy to just become a caregiver and then that's the only thing you are is caregiver. And you've narrowed your world. So you want to think about what are you doing to give yourself a break and to make yourself feel good and not be so exhausted. You need to rearrange priorities. When you become a caregiver, you're not going to be perfect at everything. And maybe the house is not going to be as clean as it once was. Maybe you need to reorganize your time and not do some of the things that you did. Caregiving time I always think of as slowing the clock down. It takes longer when you're trying to help somebody and it's just going to take longer. And you just have to resolve yourself that it's going to take a while. You need to accept help from family and friends. Now, I know that when people say to you, just let me know if there's anything I can do, what is your answer? Oh, I'm fine. We're doing fine. We don't need help. Wrong answer. Wrong answer. You need to think in your head, what would be helpful? Would it be helpful for someone else to cook a meal, drive the person to an appointment, maybe take them out to the golf course or a park or something and give you a break? Would it be helpful if somebody called more often? Would it be helpful to maybe go shopping for you, find some new clothes, do something with you? Think about things like that. And you need to accept things are going to go wrong once in a while.
Sometimes if that third person is like a close family friend or relative, having them go to the doctor's appointments with you and your loved one, oftentimes in a spousal relationship, the emotions are so strong, the questions that they had never get asked.
That's right.
Whereas you have a third person who's involved but a little bit distant, they can keep things on
I
course.
Actually cover that point when I have a class on how to talk to your doctor.
Oh, awesome.
And that's part of that class is bring someone with you, because if someone gives you a tough diagnosis or something that you don't want to hear, oh, you're going to have surgery or something, your brain shuts down and you're thinking, oh my gosh, now what? Da, 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 and the doctor's still talking. So you want to bring somebody to take notes and write your questions down and then come up with, what am I going to say when... let the doctor talk first, have his say or her say, and then ask whatever other questions that you have. How long is it, how long until the medication is going to take effect? How will we know if the therapy is working? Those kinds of questions are open-ended. Those are good to ask at the doctor's office. You need to slow yourself down too and realize that you just are not going to be able to get every single thing done. You also don't want to take the person that you're caring for, their reactions personally. It's very easy to think that they're yelling at you or upset with you, and when they're upset about the disease. Join a support group. It's really important to talk to other people in your situation because it's very easy to feel isolated. I talked about maintaining your own health, both mentally and physically. You need to get away from caregiving once in a while and just do something else and think about what you would like to do. If you weren't a caregiver at that moment, what would you be doing? And you need to maintain your sense of humor. I always tell a few funny mom stories because it makes people laugh. And, you know, you have to laugh once in a while. You can't just, you know, be so engrossed in it all the time. And maybe you can share a laugh with your loved one when things don't go quite well. And you know, it may be a time that you can come together more because you're both facing this horrific disease and horrible things that are going on medically. But that doesn't mean that your loved one still isn't there and able to enjoy some of the other things. It could be old movies or comedies or something, and lighten the mood up a little bit and not take everything quite so seriously. But there's also some positive emotions when you're caregiving. You can have a sense of gratitude. I was really proud I was able to help my mom because we had a rough relationship most of my life. But at the end, she was very grateful for what I did, and we got to spend some quality time together. Every weekend I would take her out. Even if we just went to the park, and when towards the end there, we sat in the car, and I had a little picnic in the car because she was too weak to get up and out of the car. And so we threw the bread to the ducks just from the car door, and the ducks came up by the... It was something simple, but, you know, we have good memories about that now. So you get a real sense of gratitude that you're able to do what you are, and some pride and accomplishment knowing you've done something new. I never thought I'd be able to do all the things I've done as a caregiver. You can find joy in sharing some special moments with your loved one. And you can form a special bond with your family. My sisters and I are very close now, and we called ourselves Team Sisters because we all wanted to help Mom in our own way. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. I hope that if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm not the best with technology, so I'm not sure how they respond with questions.
YouTube does have a live chat system. They can text messages in, but usually we'll set questions via email or phone. Okay.
So everyone has my email address. It's my name, Andrea, Andrea, Holmberg, HOLM like Mary, B like boy, ERG, @sharp.com. So if there's some services that you're looking for that I didn't cover, this was a broad generalization of different kinds of services. You can always call and ask. I don't always know everything, but I try and figure things out. There are some things that are important of getting minor home repairs and maybe adapting homes and such that could be useful too. So thank you all very much for your time.
You want to go back to your first slide? It has your name and so forth.
Oh. There we go.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention. So I went a little overtime, but we went late. So I wasn't watching the clock. I figured you'd give me a 5-minute sign if I needed to cut off.
Well, we're kind of flexible on that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't usually do this one in 30 minutes. person I talked to back way back when.
Renee?
But
Oh, it's okay. What's
it's
your
in my
cell phone?
it's in my database. My cell phone is 619-277-8119. Now I wonder where I put it. Oh, I put it on the table. So I didn't turn off any of this.
No, just leave it for him. He'd be here in a minute.
All right. So, but we talked several years ago when you all were still at the old office. People from thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah.
All done.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
people from ALS
I
came.
thought when this came up, it was stopped.
When people from ALS came to my office, and I had a nursing class that would teach how do you physically take care of them, how do you transfer them, how do you
Oh, yeah, we
use
did a
equipment.
class at our new location.
Did you?
One time.
Okay, because
Where
I
I
was
told
going to
you
say,
this training?
nobody ever contacted me again about setting up the
Okay.
training. I gave them Rosalind's number, a nurse, and she was
Somebody
in
came and did it.
Oh, were they from Charlotte?
Just 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I can't
But that's,
remember.
but, you know, if you decided that that was something you all might like, then, you know, we'd certainly see about doing that. So I'm part of the Caregiver Coalition. Oh my God, and I forgot to mention the Caregiver Coalition. Here on the front.
You want to go back? Or we'll add it?
Can we add it?
We can add it.
Because the Caregiver Coalition's who's invited me here.
Right.
I didn't even mention them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I forgot which hat I was wearing.
Yeah, just give me some text and
I'll text you
we'll
what
add
to
it.
say.
Yeah.
All right, and say, maybe at the beginning, say this is, I'll send you another slide that says this program is brought to you. So I'm part of the Caregiver
There you
Coalition. The Caregiver Coalition, I'll do that.
Okay.
All right.
So you should have the link.